Far beyond the edge of known space where the stars grew thin and cold, the dead moon series, 9 hung in silence. Its surface was broken into jagged rings of rock and ice, drifting slowly in the endless dark. No life had touched it in centuries. No ship had reason to come. It was a graveyard of stone and shadow, perfect for secrets, and secrets were exactly what the aliens brought. Their fleet was small but deadly. 7 warships, each shaped like a curved blade, black as void, smooth as glass. They did not burn engines or flash lights. They moved without sound, without heat, wrapped in layers of stealth so deep even the best human scanners would see nothing but empty space. They called themselves the Vorth. They were old, older than humanity, and they believed they were smarter. For weeks they had waited in the rings of Series 9, watching, listening. From here they could see the outer colonies, tiny dots of light on distant worlds full of humans who laughed too loud, built too fast, and trusted too easily. The Vorth had studied them. They knew human ships were slow, their weapons crude, their minds chaotic. They saw no threat, only prey. They planned to strike at dawn cycle on the colony of Alara 3, not with warning, not with demands. They would drop from the dark like blades, burn the cities, take what they wanted, and vanish before anyone could react. They were certain no one knew they were here. They were wrong. High on a spire of fractured rock, half hidden in the shadow of a drifting boulder, a figure sat perfectly still. She wore a cloak the color of moonlit fog, its edges shimmering faintly as if woven from starlight itself. Her boots were silent on the stone. Her breath was slow. Her eyes never blinked. Her name was Lila. She was human, but she did not look like the humans the Vorth had studied. She was tall, lean, with pale gold hair tied back in a simple braid. Her skin was sun-worn but smooth, her hands calloused but steady. Her eyes, gray like storm clouds over ocean, held a stillness that made even the void seem restless. Beside her, coiled like a mountain made of night, lay her dragon. His name was Kale. He was not a beast of myth or fairy tale. He was real, massive, ancient. His scales were black, but not flat black. They shifted with hints of deep violet and ember red when starlight touched them just right. His wings, folded now against his sides, were wide enough to blot out a small moon. His claws could tear through reinforced hull plating like paper. And his eyes, golden, slitted, glowing faintly, watched the alien fleet with quiet hunger. Lila did not speak. She did not need to. She and Kale shared a bond deeper than words. It had been forged years ago, on a dying world where fire rained from the sky and only the 2 of them survived. Since then, they had walked the edges of human space, unseen, unheard, guarding what others forgot. She had felt the Vorth before she saw them, not with machines, not with radar, with something older, something the colonies had abandoned long ago, listening to the silence. Most humans filled silence with noise, music, chatter, engines, alarms. But Lila had been taught to hear what lived between sounds, the hum of a distant reactor, the whisper of ion trails, the faint tremor of cloaked drives straining against quantum fields. To her, the Vorth fleet was not invisible. It was loud. For 3 days she had watched them, learned their patterns, counted their ships, mapped their blind spots. They rotated in a slow spiral, always keeping their command vessel at the center. They never sent scouts. They never scanned the rings closely. They assumed nothing could live out here. Nothing could threaten them. That was their first mistake. Lila shifted slightly, just enough to ease the stiffness in her legs. Kale stirred, his tail twitching like a cat's. A low rumble moved through his chest, not a growl, but a question. She placed a hand on his neck, just behind his jaw. The scales there were warm, almost soft. "Not yet," she whispered, so softly the words barely left her lips. Kale settled again, but his eyes stayed locked on the nearest ship. He knew what was coming. He had tasted alien blood before. He remembered the sting of their weapons, the sour tang of their fear. He was ready. Lila looked down at the fleet again. She saw no faces, no windows. The Vorth were insect-like, armored, hive-minded. They did not value individual life, only the swarm. That made them dangerous, but also predictable. They thought stealth was power. They thought hiding made them safe. They did not understand that true power was not in being unseen. It was in seeing everything while no one saw you. Lila had no weapons on her back, no rifle, no sidearm. She carried only a short blade at her hip, its hilt wrapped in worn leather. But she did not need guns. She had Kale, and she had patience. Patience was the sharpest weapon of all. The Vorth began their final checks. Lights flickered deep inside their ships, tiny pulses of energy as weapons charged and jump drives warmed. They would move soon. Within hours, maybe less. Lila stood, slowly, smoothly, like a shadow rising from stone. Kale rose with her, unfolding his body with a grace that defied his size. His wings stretched once, silent, casting a vast silhouette over the spire. She climbed onto his back, settling between his shoulder blades where the scales formed a natural saddle. She did not strap in. She did not need to. She and Kale moved as one. He leapt, not with a roar, not with fire, just a powerful push of his hind legs, and they were airborne, gliding on currents of solar wind and gravity. The rings of Series 9 blurred below them. The alien ships grew larger. Lila kept low, her body pressed against Kale's neck. She wore no helmet, no suit. The void should have killed her instantly, but around her the air shimmered faintly. A field of bioenergy, woven into her cloak, fed by Kyle's own life force. It was old tech, older than the Vorth, older than Earth. It let her breathe. It let her survive. They passed within 100 meters of the nearest warship, close enough to see the seams in its hull, close enough to hear the faint hum of its core, if one knew how to listen. The ship's sensors did not react. Its crew did not look up. They were blind. Lila smiled, not a cruel smile, just a quiet one, the kind a hunter gives when the prey walks into the trap. She guided Kale in a wide circle around the fleet, memorizing every detail. The command ship had a slight warp in its left fin, damage from an old battle. The rear vessel had a weak shield generator, pulsing slower than the others. The third ship from the front had a hatch that cycled every 23 minutes for thermal venting. She noted it all. Then, when she had seen enough, she tapped Kyle's neck twice, a signal. He banked sharply, wings folding for a moment before snapping open again, and they shot upward, vanishing into the higher rings. The Vorth never noticed. Back on the spire, Lila dismounted. Her legs trembled slightly, not from fear but from the rush of focus. She knelt and pressed her palm to the cold rock. She closed her eyes. She did not pray. She listened. The void answered. It told her the Vorth would jump in 6 hours. It told her their target was Alara 3. It told her they carried bioplague canisters in their cargo holds, designed to wipe out human resistance without destroying infrastructure. Lila opened her eyes. They were hard now, sharp. She looked at Kale. He met her gaze. No words passed between them. None were needed. They both knew what came next. The Vorth thought they were hidden. They thought they were safe. They thought no one could reach them in their cloaked fortress of silence. They did not know a human woman sat in the dark, watching. They did not know her dragon waited with fire in his throat. They did not know that the quietest hunter is the deadliest, and they certainly did not know that in less than 6 hours, one soft voice would speak behind them, and their war would end before it began. Lila stood. She adjusted her cloak. She checked her blade. Then she sat again, cross-legged, eyes on the fleet, waiting, always waiting. The stars burned cold above. The rings turned slow, and in the heart of the silence, death prepared to whisper. To the Vorth, Lila should not have existed. Their databanks held millions of human profiles. Soldiers, scientists, pilots, colonists. All loud, all emotional, all bound by limits of flesh and fear. None moved like her. None watched like her. None carried a dragon at their side as if it were as natural as breathing. But Lila was not like other humans. She had been born on a world called Varel, a colony lost during the first Outer Rim Wars. By the time she was 5, the planet was ash. Her parents were gone. The cities were rubble. The sky burned red for months. She survived because a group of wanderers found her hiding in a collapsed greenhouse, clutching a half-dead seedling. They were not soldiers, not rebels. They called themselves the Keepers. They followed the old ways, before machines spoke louder than wind, before cities drowned out the stars. They taught her to listen to silence, to read the shape of shadows, to move without leaving a trace. They showed her how to bond with living things, not control them, but walk beside them as equals. And when she was 12, they led her to the crater. Deep in the heart of Virel's dead mountains, a dragon slept, not a machine, not a myth. A true dragon, wounded, half buried in cooled lava. Its scales cracked, its breath shallow. The keepers said it had fallen from the sky during the final battle, struck down by weapons that should not exist. They did not fear it. They honored it. Lila was the one who approached, not with a weapon, not with fear, with water, with food, with quiet presence. For weeks she sat beside it. She spoke softly. She sang old songs her mother used to hum. She did not expect anything in return. She simply offered kindness. On the 27th night, the dragon opened its eyes. Golden, ancient, full of pain and memory. It looked at her not as prey, not as threat, but as something rare, something real. It rose, slowly, painfully. And when it stood, it bowed its great head to her. That was the moment Kale chose her. They left Virel together. The keepers gave her a cloak woven from void moss and star thread, one that bent light and muffled sound. They gave her no weapons, only a blade forged from fallen sky metal, and they gave her a name, Lila, which in the old tongue meant she who walks between worlds. Since then, she and Kale had drifted through the fringe systems. They did not join fleets. They did not answer calls for war. But when darkness gathered, they appeared, always quiet, always unseen until it was too late for the enemy. The Vorth had never encountered the Keepers. They had erased all records of them during their early scouting missions, assuming they were just another primitive cult. They did not know the Keepers had preserved knowledge older than their own empire. They did not know that some humans still remembered how to speak to dragons. And so, when Lila moved through the rings of Series 9, the Vorth sensors saw nothing. Their logic engines dismissed the faint thermal bloom near the spire as a rock-venting gas. Their scouts never looked twice. They believed biology could not match their technology. They were wrong in every way. Back on her perch, Lila watched the Vorth fleet prepare for jump. Their movements were precise, mechanical, synchronized. Every ship pulsed with the same rhythm, like heartbeats tied to one mind. That was their strength and their weakness. If you broke the mind, the body fell. She knew she could not fight all 7 ships at once, not head-on. But she did not need to. She only needed to break the command vessel. The rest would falter. But first, she needed to get inside. She turned to Kale. He lay with his head resting on his foreclaws, eyes half closed but alert. She placed her hand on his snout. His scales were warm, humming faintly with stored energy. "We go soft," she whispered. Kale exhaled slowly, a wisp of smoke curling from his nostrils. He understood. No fire, no roar, not yet. This was a hunt of silence. They waited until the fleet's rotation brought the command ship to the far side of the ring, shielded from the others by a thick cluster of ice boulders. Lila climbed onto Kale's back. He launched upward, not with power, but with glide, using the faint gravity tides of Series 9 to carry them like a leaf on wind. They approached from below, where the ship's underbelly sensors were weakest. Lila had noted it during her first pass. The Vorth trusted their stealth too much. They did not guard their blind spots. Kael hovered just meters from the hull. Lila slid off his back, her boots magnetizing softly to the metal. She moved like water, low and smooth, toward a maintenance port she had seen cycling earlier. The port hissed open on schedule. She slipped inside before it closed. The corridor beyond was dark, lit only by faint emergency strips along the floor. The air was cold, sterile, smelling of ozone and metal. No alarm sounded. No guards appeared. The Vorth did not expect intruders. Why would they? No human ship could get this close. No human could survive the void without a suit. But Lila was not just human. She was Keeper-born, Void Walker, dragon-bonded. She moved down the corridor, her steps soundless. Every few meters she paused, listening. She heard the hum of machinery, the distant pulse of the core, the soft click of chitinous limbs moving through distant halls. She followed the sound toward the heart of the ship. Deep inside, in a chamber lined with pulsing organic consoles, the Vorth commander stood. It was taller than the others, its carapace lined with silver filaments that glowed with shared thought. It did not speak aloud. It communicated through pulses in the ship's neural web. It reviewed final jump coordinates. Alara 3, population 2 million. Defense is minimal. Perfect target. It did not feel Lila behind it. She stood in the doorway, cloaked in shadow, her blade in hand. She could have killed it then, slit its throat, severed its neural spine, But that was not her way. She did not kill without reason. She wanted them to know, to understand, to remember. She stepped forward. The commander turned. Its many eyes widened, not in fear at first, in disbelief. It saw a human, alone, unarmed except for a primitive blade, wearing no armor, breathing without a mask. Impossible. It reached for the alarm note on the wall. Lila moved faster. She did not strike. She spoke. "You thought you were hidden." Her voice was soft, calm, clear. It echoed strangely in the chamber as if the walls themselves listened. The commander froze. Its filaments flickered erratically. Confusion rippled through the hive mind. How? How could a human be here? How could she breathe? How could she bypass every layer of defense? It tried to broadcast a warning to the fleet, but Lila had already severed the neural link with a flick of her blade, a precise cut to a glowing cord behind the console. The ship went silent, not dead, just deaf. The commander hissed, raising its clawed arms. Lila did not wait. She darted aside as it lunged, then struck, not to kill, but to disable. Her blade sliced through the joints of its limbs. It collapsed, twitching, unable to move. She looked down at it. "You forgot one thing," she said. Then she turned and walked out. Behind her, the chamber lights dimmed. The ship's system stuttered. The jump sequence failed. Outside, Kyle waited. He had not moved. Not once. He knew she would return. She climbed onto his back. "Now," she said. Kale opened his maw, and fire answered. Not ordinary fire, not chemical flame. This was resonance plasma, forged in his core, tuned to the frequency of Vorth alloy. It did not just burn, it unraveled. It vibrated the very atoms of the hull until they fell apart. The command ship did not explode. It collapsed inward, folding like paper in a fist. Light flared once, bright and silent, then vanished. The other 6 ships spun in confusion. Their shared mind was broken. Their leader was gone. Their jump sequence was corrupted. They scanned the rings, found nothing. But Lila and Kale were already gone, riding the shockwave into the deeper dark. On the bridge of the nearest Vorth vessel, a junior officer pulsed a frantic query through the hive net. No answer came. For the first time in centuries, the Vorth felt something they had long forgotten. Doubt. And behind them, unseen, unheard, Lila smiled. The hunt had begun. After the command ship fell, silence returned to the rings of Series 9. But it was a different kind of silence now. Not calm, not empty. It was the silence of something waiting, of breath held, of fear growing in the dark. The 6 remaining Vorth ships drifted in disarray. Their formation broke. Their movements became jerky, uncertain. Without the commander's mind to guide them, the hive fractured into fragments. Each ship tried to think for itself, but the Vorth were not built for independence. Their thoughts tangled. Their systems glitched. Alarms flickered, but no one knew how to respond. Lila watched from a distance, perched on Kale's back as they hovered behind a massive ice shard. She did not rush. She let the confusion grow. Panic was a weapon just as sharp as fire. Kale's sides rose and fell slowly. His golden eyes tracked the nearest ship, a mid-sized destroyer with cracked plating along its starboard wing. It pulsed weakly like a wounded animal trying to stand. "They do not know what to do," Lila murmured. Kale rumbled low in his throat. Not agreement. Not disagreement. Just awareness. He remembered other battles. Other enemies who thought they were safe until the sky burned. Lila tightened her grip on his neck. "We take them one by one. Not with noise, with truth." She meant they would not just destroy. They would show the Vorth that their greatest strength, their unity, was also their cage. Without it, they were lost. She guided Kale toward the damaged destroyer. They moved without engine glow, without heat bloom. Kale used the solar winds and the weak gravity tides to glide, silent as shadow. Lila kept her body low, her cloak rippling faintly like mist. The Vorth ship scanned the area again. Its sensors swept in wide arcs, but they looked for energy spikes, for weapon signatures, for ship signatures. They did not look for a woman on a dragon. They did not even consider it possible. Lila reached the hull. She slid off Kale's back and pressed her palm to the cold metal. She closed her eyes. She listened. Inside, she heard chaos. Vorth voices pulsed through the neural web, overlapping, contradicting. Some wanted to retreat. Others wanted to attack blindly. A few tried to reboot the hive link, but the command frequency was gone. erased when the flagship collapsed. She found a vent near the rear thruster array. It cycled open every 30 seconds to release excess heat. She waited, counted, moved. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of burnt wiring and alien sweat. Sharp, metallic, sour. She moved through the narrow service tunnel, her boots making no sound. The walls pulsed faintly with bioluminescent veins, the ship itself alive in a way human vessels were not. She reached a junction. To the left, crew quarters. To the right, the core chamber. Straight ahead, the bridge. She chose the core. The Vorth power source was not a reactor like humans used. It was a living crystal, grown in the heart of a dead star, pulsing with captured light. It fed the ship's mind, its weapons, its stealth. If she disrupted it, the ship would go blind. But she did not want to destroy it. Not yet. She wanted them to feel her. She stepped into the core chamber. It was circular, lined with glowing tendrils that connected to the central crystal. 3 Vorth engineers worked there, their clawed hands moving over consoles trying to stabilize the failing systems. They did not see her at first. She stood in the doorway, still as stone. Then one turned, its eyes widened. It pulsed a warning through the ship net. The others spun around. Lila did not run. She walked forward. "You hunted us," she said, her voice soft but clear. "You thought we were weak, loud, easy to break," the Vorth hissed, raising their limbs. One reached for a plasma cutter on the wall. Lila raised her hand, not in threat, in warning. "You do not understand," she said. "We are not what you think." Then she stepped to the side and tapped the wall with her blade. A deep hum filled the chamber. Kale's fire had already seeped into the hull during the first strike, not as flame, but as resonance. It lingered in the metal, waiting. Her tap was the signal. The hum grew. The crystal flickered. Cracks spread across its surface. The Vorth screamed, not in sound but in thought. A wave of pure terror that rippled through the ship. Lila turned and walked out. She did not look back. Behind her, the crystal shattered. The ship went dark. Its stealth field collapsed. Its engines died. Its lights blinked out. It became a dead hulk, tumbling slowly in the rings. On the other ships, the loss registered like a scream in the mind. Another piece of the hive gone. Another voice silenced. Panic spread. One ship tried to jump away. Its drive flared, but Lila had already marked it during her first pass. She knew its nav core was unstable. The jump failed. The drive overloaded. The ship tore itself apart in a flash of blue-white light. Another fired blindly into the rings, its plasma cannons lashing out at shadows. It hit nothing but rock. The recoil spun it off course. It collided with a drifting asteroid and broke in two. Lila and Kale watched from above. "They are breaking themselves," Lila said. Kale exhaled a thin stream of smoke. He did not need to burn them all. Fear was doing the work, but 2 ships remained, smarter, calmer. They had stopped firing, stopped jumping. They powered down most systems, going into deep stealth again, hiding. They thought if they stayed still, they would be safe. They did not know Lila did not need machines to find them. She closed her eyes. She listened to the silence, and in that silence she heard it, the faint thrum of a heartbeat. Not human, not dragon, alien, scared, hiding behind layers of tech but still alive. She pointed. There. Kale banked and flew low over the ring field. They passed over boulders, ice sheets, debris clouds. Then Lila tapped his neck twice. He stopped, hovered. Below them, nestled in a crater of black rock, lay a Vorth scout vessel, smaller than the others, faster, built for escape, not war. Its hull was cold, its systems dark. But inside, 3 Vorth waited, hoping Lila dropped down. She landed on the hull with a soft thud. She walked to the airlock. It was sealed. She placed her palm on it. "Open," she said. Nothing happened. She waited. Then slowly, the airlock hissed open. The Vorth inside had seen the others fall. They had seen fire without source, heard voices in empty halls. They knew this was not a battle they could win. They surrendered. Lila stepped inside. The chamber was dim. The 3 Vorth stood in the center, limbs lowered, carapaces dull with shame. They did not speak. They did not need to. She looked at them. "Why did you come?" One pulsed a weak thought image. A dying homeworld poisoned by their own wars, seeking new life, new bodies, new hope. They saw humanity as soft, replaceable. Lila nodded. "You were wrong. She did not kill them. She sealed the airlock from the inside, disabled their weapons, and locked their drive. Then she left them adrift, alive but harmless. The last ship tried to run. It fired its engines and shot toward open space. Fast, desperate. Lila did not chase it. She simply said one word, Kyle. The dragon spread his wings. He did not roar. He did not burn. He flew faster than any ship. He caught up in seconds. He landed on the hull like a storm-given form. His claws tore through the metal like cloth. He ripped open the bridge. The Vorth inside froze. Lila stood behind them. "You thought you were hidden," she said again. This time, they believed her. She disabled the ship, left it floating. No fire, no death, just defeat. By dawn cycle on Alara 3, the Vorth fleet was gone, not destroyed in a blaze of glory, not lost in a grand battle, undone by silence, by a woman who spoke softly, by a dragon who moved like night. And somewhere in the rings, Lila sat once more on her spire. Kale curled beside her. The stars burned cold. The war was over. But the legend had just begun. The outer colonies never saw the battle. They did not hear the silence break. They did not feel the fear that ran through the Vorth fleet like a storm through dry grass. All they knew was that a threat had been reported near Series 9, and then, without warning, it vanished. No wreckage reached their scanners. No distress calls echoed through the comms. Just quiet and safety. But Lila knew better. She knew the war was not truly over. It had only changed shape. She sat on the edge of the spire, legs dangling over the void, watching the last Vorth ship drift in slow circles. It was the scout vessel, the one she had spared. Its systems were locked, its crew alive but powerless. She had left them with enough air, enough water, enough time to think, to remember, to carry a story back to whatever remained of their kind. Kale lay behind her, his head resting on his foreclaws, eyes half closed but alert. Smoke curled from his nostrils in slow, steady rhythm. He was tired but not weak. Fire still lived in his core. "Ready?" Lila reached into her cloak and pulled out a small object, a smooth stone, dark gray with flecks of silver. It was from Varel, the last piece of her home. She turned it over in her fingers, feeling its weight, its memory. She thought of the colonies, of children playing in domes under artificial suns, of farmers tending hydroponic fields, of pilots laughing over cheap coffee in station mess halls. They did not know how close they had come to fire and plague. They did not know a woman and her dragon had stood between them in the dark. And that was how it should be. The keepers taught that true guardians do not seek glory. They do not wear medals. They do not stand in parades. They walk the edges so others can sleep in the center. Lila stood. She tucked the stone back into her cloak. She looked at Kale. "We go," she said. He rose without sound. His wings unfolded, casting long shadows over the rock. She climbed onto his back, settling into the familiar curve between his shoulders. He leapt into the void, not with fury but with grace. They flew toward the drifting scout ship. As they neared, the airlock cycled open, not by command, by choice. One Vorth stepped out onto the hull. It was smaller than the others, its carapace dull green, its limbs thin. It held no weapon. It simply stood, facing them. Lila dismounted. She walked across the short gap between ships, her boots magnetizing to the metal. She stopped a few paces away. The Vorth bowed its head. It pulsed a single thought, not through the hive net, but through a small device in its claw. The device translated the pulse into soft, broken words. "You showed mercy." Lila nodded. "Mercy is not weakness. It is strength you do not understand." The Vorth was silent for a long moment. Then it extended its claw. In its palm rested a small crystal, black, smooth, humming faintly. "Memory stone," it said through the device. "Our shame, our lesson. We will carry it." Lila took the stone. It was warm, alive with echoes of fear, confusion, awe. She tucked it into her cloak beside the stone from Varel. "Go," she said. "Tell your people. Humans are not prey, and some of us walk with dragons." The Vorth bowed again. It stepped back into the ship. The airlock sealed. Moments later, the scout ship fired its emergency beacon, a low, steady pulse that meant surrender, not war. It would be picked up by colony patrols. They would find the ship, question the crew, learn what happened, but they would not find Lila. By the time the first human rescue vessel arrived, she and Cale were already gone. They flew deeper into the fringe, past dead comets and frozen moons toward a place few dared to go, the shattered belt of Xeris, where old wars left scars in space itself. Lila had heard whispers of new movements there, strange signals, unknown energy spikes. Something was waking. She did not know what it was, but she knew it would not stay hidden for long. Cale banked around a drifting hulk, a warship from a century-old battle, half melted, its name long erased. Lila ran her hand along his neck. "They will talk about us," she said softly. "Some will call us myth. Others will call us ghost. But they will remember." Cale rumbled in agreement. His fire had not been wasted. It had spoken. And silence, when broken by truth, echoes louder than any explosion. As they passed through the outer edge of the belt, Lila looked back one last time toward the colonies, tiny lights in the dark. Safe. Unaware. She did not feel pride. She felt duty. Quiet, constant. Like the stars. And then she turned forward. Because the void was never truly empty. Somewhere out there, another shadow waited, another threat, another war. And Lila would be ready. Not with armies. Not with fleets. Just with silence, with fire. With a dragon who moved like night and a heart that never broke. They flew on into the dark, where guardians belong. Weeks passed. Then months. The story of the vanished Fourth Fleet became rumor. Then legend, then myth. On the colony worlds, people spoke of it in hushed tones over meals or in station corridors. Some said a ghost ship had appeared and erased the aliens with a single pulse. Others claimed it was a secret human weapon hidden for years. A few old spacers whispered about a woman with storm-gray eyes and a dragon made of night. But most laughed and called it bedtime talk for scared recruits. No one believed it. No one except the Vorth. Deep in the fractured core of their dying homeworld, the survivors gathered in the great chamber of memory. The walls pulsed with living records. Light-woven tales of every battle, every loss, every shame. At the center, the scout crew stood before the Elder Hive. They did not speak. They simply placed the memory stone on the altar. The chamber fell silent. The elders touched the stone, and they saw. They saw the rings of Series 9. The silence. The woman who moved like shadow. The dragon whose fire did not burn but unraveled. They felt her voice, not loud, not angry, but certain. Final. They felt the moment their fleet broke, not from weapons, but from fear of the unknown. For the first time in their history, the Vorth felt humility. They carved a new record into the chamber wall, not of conquest, not of victory, but of warning. Etched in glowing script, it read simply, "Beware the quiet ones. They walk with dragons, and they never sent another ship toward human space." Back among the stars, Lila did not know this. She did not care to know. She was already far away beyond the edge of mapped systems, where even the long-range beacons fell silent. She and Cale drifted through the Xeris belt, hunting whispers. They found more than whispers. Hidden in the heart of a dead nebula, wrapped in layers of ancient debris, was a structure. Not a ship, not a station, a spire. Black as void, smooth as glass, covered in symbols no human had ever seen. It pulsed faintly like a slow heartbeat. Lila landed on its surface. Cale stayed close, his golden eyes scanning the dark. She pressed her palm to the wall. It was warm, alive. She listened, and the spire listened back. It did not speak in words. It spoke in images, in feelings. It showed her a time long before humans walked upright, a time when dragons ruled the stars. When elves, true star elves, not myth, sang songs that shaped reality. When silence was a language and stillness was power. The Vorth were not the first to forget. They would not be the last. But someone had to remember. Lila stepped back. She looked at Cale. He lowered his head, not in submission, but in understanding. He remembered too. Pieces of it. Echoes in his blood. They stayed at the spire for 3 days. Lila meditated. Cale guarded. And the spire shared its knowledge, not all at once, but slowly, like water filling a dry well. When they left, Lila carried something new in her cloak. Not a weapon. Not a tool. A seed. Small silver, humming with potential. The spire had given it to her. A promise. A beginning. She did not know what it would grow into, but she would plant it where it was needed. As they flew away, the spire faded into the nebula, hidden once more, waiting for the next quiet one to find it. On Ilara 3, life went on. Children played. Crops grew. Ships came and went. No one looked up and wondered who had saved them. No statues were built. No songs were sung. But in the quiet moments, when the lights dimmed and the stars shone bright, some felt it. A sense of safety they could not explain. A whisper in the dark that said they were not alone. Lila would never return to the colonies. She was not made for cities or crowds. Her place was in the edges and the spaces between, where threats grew in silence and guardians answered in kind. Kale flew steady, his wings cutting through the void like blades through water. Lila sat tall on his back, her cloak rippling softly, her eyes on the path ahead. She thought of the keepers, of Varel. Of the first time Kale opened his eyes and saw her not as prey, but as kin. She thought of the Vorth commander, frozen in disbelief when she spoke behind it. She thought of the scout who offered shame as a gift. All of it mattered. All of it was part of the balance. The galaxy was vast, full of noise and chaos, but in its quiet corners something older endured, something human, yet more, something that walked with dragons and spoke softly to the dark. And as long as shadows gathered, Lila would be there. Not for glory, not for thanks, but because someone had to stand between the light and the teeth that waited in the night. She touched Kale's neck. He turned slightly, his golden eyes meeting hers for a heartbeat. Then they flew on into the deep, where silence lived and legends began.